Welcome to The Slice, a podcast where you get to learn about entrepreneurs from all over the world, learning about their struggles, their triumphs, their journey through one of the most challenging but one of the most fulfilling endeavors that somebody can stumble upon and complete in their life, which is starting something for themselves, starting their own business. And today I have on the lovely Kat Morga, owner of Adventure Smarter. Kat, how are you doing on this recording on a Friday? Let's say brunch, morning to
Uh,
afternoon. How are you doing today?
really good. Glad it's Friday. Glad we got good weather coming in, and I guess end of April. So who doesn't like that? Best day of the
Exactly.
year. Best day of the year. April
Yeah, for
25th.
sure. For sure. Excited for the hopefully better weather. We're getting some rain, I think, now. So, looking out my window, I could see the rain clouds. But yeah, excited to have you on and excited to learn a little bit more about what you do and to introduce Adventure Smarter to the world. So, let's just dive right in. Tell me a little bit about who you are and give me a little bit of a slice about what you do.
Sure. So I started my own travel agency. I started it pre-COVID. Basically, my husband and I moved to Washington, D.C. We had just gotten married, and I realized that there was like something missing from my life. Like I had this husband, we lived in the cutest town in Alexandria, Virginia, very happy. And then I was like, I just need something, right, for
Mm-hmm.
me. I was working full time and I got a self-help book and it said to make two lists. One is all the things you love and one is basically all the things you're really good at. And then the next chapter said compare the two lists and see if any match up. And coming from a hospitality project manager background and having really traveled the world pretty extensively, I was like, huh. And I Googled, are travel agents still a thing? The answer was yes. And I started just Googling, and anytime I hit a roadblock, I would go to Google and do a little bit more research. So this sort of started out as a side hustle, a passion, and is now a full-time business that keeps me busy traveling the world myself and helping others travel the world.
That's awesome. I've had the last guest, Emily Brown. She had the same story where, and even the first guest of the 2025 season, Sarah Adair, started from a side hustle going on to something full time, and it's a common story. It's a common path, and you make a lot of good points about having going from something that you're passionate about, something that you are good at, and mixing the two. I think that's a great way to approach it. And so you said pre-COVID, and now it's full time. What was the moment, if there was a moment, where you knew, okay, now I have to go all in on this business? What was that moment?
So you play a very tough game when you have a husband and I have kids. So
Mm.
a big part of it was I needed to wait until the year ended because of health insurance.
Ah.
So the whole family was on my health insurance. We had some medical things happen early in the year, so I knew there was it didn't financially make sense to flip over and be full time and have to start from zero. So especially any American that pays for their own health insurance, knows how that game can be. So basically, that was a big part of it. Is I knew I had to go through the end of the year. Once I got into like November, December, I, honestly, with travel, you really don't get a bulk of your pay until people travel. So the
Hmm.
lead time is very long to sort of see funds come in, and the purchase time, it's a long relationship, right? These trips aren't, $100 investment. They're thousands and thousands. So it takes a long time to build that relationship with people, and then get that word of mouth referral takes a while. So I needed to have enough funds in the bank, right, to sort of keep me feeling comfortable for my lifestyle in my house. I had to get through this insurance and flip over to my husband's, right? Wait till the end of the year
Hmm.
when all the numbers reset, basically. So I went full time going into a January, knowing, all right, like now, if we're going to do it, this is when it
You got
financially
to do
makes
it.
the most sense. So for me, it was mostly a numbers game. It wasn't really an emotional decision. I definitely felt like I was working two full-time jobs and I was
Mm.
really, going to the gym really early, staying up late, having to call in support to help out with the kids and life because my husband travels. But it, once the math started mathing, I was like, it's time.
No, I love that phrase. I say it all the time. When the math started mathing, I use it everywhere. And you make a good point. You talked about the decision was a logical one and not an emotional one, and that's where I think that can pay dividends for a business owner, especially when something like insurance. Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And so looking at that and looking at your journey so far, what is your overall mission, kind of a bird's eye view of your work, and what drives you to be one of the best travel agents today?
So my goal and basically like the core of who I am and what I want for people when they travel, what I want for my own kids, my own family, and my networking life, basically all of it is I hope to bring people together. I want them to experience new things. I want them to connect with others and walk away with a deeper appreciation for the world and each other, right?
Mm,
So I'm not saying you need to agree with everyone. I'm saying that we can sit there and try to understand people and listen and be empathetic and try to understand where they came from and how they got to where they are and not be judgmental. I want us to have authentic experiences, right? So you want to do some bucket list trip. I don't want to put you on a bus with, 100 other people and you're just shifting your way through, I don't know, the Louvre. I want you to have an experience that you come away from that thinking, I saw and did stuff that I either didn't expect to, or I feel like I understand this more.
mhm.
So, and I believe that honestly in every part of my life. I try to do that with my kids. Like, we need to be respectful. We don't have to agree with everybody. We need to be respectful and honest and walk away with a deeper understanding of each other. Because I think when people are able to meet others, travel more with empathy, with understanding, you become a better human.
Absolutely, absolutely, that's spot on. And thinking about, you know, furthering, diving deeper into this, into your story, I know that we had a previous conversation. You mentioned that one of the biggest challenges has been giving yourself downtime. I think that for anybody who's doing anything for themselves, finding downtime can be tough because you always want to be on, you always want to be doing something to further your business. So elaborate on that and explain why downtime is so important for entrepreneurs.
I mean, it is very important, and I am terrible at it. So I work so much within my calendar and my schedule that I literally schedule my downtime.
Mm,
So if I want to do something, it needs to be scheduled on the calendar, out of the way, put your phone down, um, be in the moment. And it is hard for me to not always be like on. The nice thing about, I guess, my personality is that I'm always who I am. So, like, I'm not, putting on a show to represent a business that isn't me.
right.
What you see is what you get, which is a blessing and a curse. But for me, scheduling my downtime time is the most important and sort of spacing it out. Now, since going full time with this, I think my biggest thing is not overextending myself. So it's scheduling
Mm,
downtime and not overbooking myself. Somebody says they want to do something with me, whether it's an event or a meeting or, hey, can you come talk to this group? Like, all right, we can't do this every day. Like, we need to
yeah.
space things out. We need to give it time and block the calendar. And it's sort of like a joke in the networking groups where people will be like, hey, Kat, you want to get a coffee? I'll be like, sure. You want to go in like 3 weeks? Because also, being that I book travel and I travel, and I'll be gone for a whole 10 days. Like, there
Mm,
goes essentially half the month.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So time blocking, you found it valuable, and so is that something that you recommend for entrepreneurs to do if they, let's say, maybe struggle with time, or maybe they kind of just do things off a whim? If like, oh, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to work on that. Yeah, I'll work a typical 8 to 5, but I'm just kind of, pretty open ended with my schedule. Do you recommend time blocking if you found that to be the best way to get everything done that needs to be done?
Yeah, I don't time block all my tasks. I time block like my appointments. So I would say if people are sort of struggling with that, I do best if things are out of my brain. So if I have something that's like, hey, I need to get this done, it needs to go written down and I can get to it when I can get to it. And then things that take a priority, they come first. So I believe I mean, former project manager, right? So
Oh, there you go.
I use like Asana
Hmm.
and I pre-schedule almost all of my tasks. So I know that on this day I'm making all of my, I don't know, Facebook posts for the next 3 weeks. This day I'm doing my LinkedIn posts for next month. But I just need to know that when I said I was going to do it, that means that I know that that day I have enough like free time to make sure that I get things done because your list will never end. You need to have an end to your day. And then usually for me at, 4, 3, 4, 5 o'clock, I will literally take a blank piece of paper and look at that long to-do list I've made and write it all down. And that's my starting list for the next day,
Yeah.
right? Because especially on like a Friday to a Monday, you're going to forget. You always do. So
Yeah.
do that while it's like fresh in your brain and then it's out of your brain.
Yeah, exactly. I do the same thing. I actually have my to-do list right
Hmm.
here, and I do the same thing. I have a pen, and if I don't get to something, I just draw an arrow to it
Hmm.
and know that if I make this schedule either tonight for, I guess I wouldn't do it for tomorrow, but let's say Monday going into Tuesday, I know exactly what I need to get done that next day, and then obviously add on those other tasks that I have to do. So I agree. That is a great way to do it. And to make sure you have everything written down so you can get it out of your brain for sure. And thinking about that and, downtime and things that you've struggled with, what has been one of the hardest moments or hardest seasons in your business so far going full time?
um, it hasn't been easy, I guess. Um, the hardest thing for me is probably whenever I travel. That can be challenging. Not being at home, not being in my routine. I'm unable to take in new discovery calls. So, like,
Mm,
I see a dip in numbers, right? If you're not selling, then, and when I'm in destination, like, I'm going all day, every day. So I don't have the opportunity, and I'm not going to do that to my partners in destination either and take time away from them. So that's probably the hardest part is the balance of traveling, right? Because you need to, if you're going to book travel, you need to always be traveling, but then also sort of have this routine at home, meeting with local business owners, talking to my clients, getting updated, and not letting things slip through the cracks.
sure, absolutely. And throughout this whole process, was there ever a point where, because it's happened to me, have you ever thought about, you know what, this is it. I too much. I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna go do something else. I'm gonna take maybe a little bit easier route. Has that ever crossed your mind? And if it has, what kept you going so you didn't
So
quit?
that hasn't crossed my mind. I actually have the opposite challenge where I overcommit to things. So one
Mm.
of my New Year's resolutions this year is to not continue doing things that don't like serve me and my purpose. So I have a hard time because I will not quit something just because I committed to it. So
Mm-hmm.
if I am doing something, I'll commit to something for like months or a year. And if I don't see something coming back to me personally, my values, my family, my business, like it's okay to quit. So I have the opposite issue where I overcommit, which sounds ridiculous, but it is a problem. So
Well, I think it's interesting because I think it's something a lot of people uh, can experience. I've done it before, whether it is overextending and overcommitting to a client load,
mhm,
or maybe it's something that I know I want to go do with people, whatever it might be. And I'm like, oh, is it really the best use of my time overall for everybody? I think it's something that people for sure struggle with, and I mean, overcommitment, it can, whether it's a month ahead, whether it's
yeah,
a year, I mean, there's so many
it
things that
burns
could
you out
play into.
and you
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
until you're burnt. And then you're like,
exactly.
so for me, it's setting myself up to not get to that point because the willpower will keep going. What will burn out is I will get like really sick. Like my
Mm,
body will shut down and be like, you need to calm down.
yeah, like, hold on a second. Let's take
Hmm.
a step back and look at this. Like, is this
Yeah.
really good? Is this really what we should do? Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Absolutely. That's interesting. That's interesting. Um, but kind of changing subjects just a little bit, but looking at the travel world and being a travel agent, there's a lot of things that people know about travel agents, and whether it's the industry, whether it's what you do, but what's something people don't typically see about your specific business, and what is something that's maybe behind the scenes that people don't get to see often? What's something that people don't know about Adventure Smarter?
Um, I guess for me, I never used a travel agent. So in general, the only thing I knew was of like my big fat Greek wedding with the girl with the which coincidentally I have on that headset right now. But you know what I mean when they go into the office and she walks and falls, like that's what I
Hmm.
think of. And what people don't realize nowadays is that, like I always say, I've got a guy. So I work with these in destination partners and I go and either meet with them in person in destination or at conferences or whatever. And like I have an Italy guy, I have a Croatia guy, I have a Montenegro guy, I have a Spain, Portugal guy. So building those relationships goes super far. And I don't think people realize sort of the energy that can go into that, as well as learning about these destinations, right?
Hmm.
It's not just like, I'm not just using ChatGPT to build your trip and then plugging in Expedia Inviter. Like, no, I have met the GM of the hotel. I've stayed there myself. Or
Hmm.
I have these partners who you want to stay in a villa in Italy. Like, no, they know the they're friends with the guy who's owned it for a million years. So I don't think people realize how much of that energy goes into that building
Hmm.
relationships and destination, and how much technology is behind travel agents. Like we have apps, we have CRMs, we have access to things and people that you don't on the
Hmm.
web, especially in destination, right? If somebody is coming to Nashville, if you Google it, like the where should I stay in Nashville is different than if your friend asks you, where should I stay in Nashville?
Yep,
Like knowing
absolutely.
the difference between, you Google it and it's like, oh, stay in the Gulch. And it's like, yeah, but if the person has two little kids, they're probably not going to want to stay in the Gulch.
Yeah.
So knowing the difference between each neighborhood, knowing the difference between the different activities, right? You can go to Broadway, but you might enjoy the listening room. You might like
Hmm.
having a table and a ticket. So that's what I like, is that sort of insider local knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. And you've mentioned it a couple times. So you travel for, a week to 10 days at a time. Explain what that is, because I know a lot of travel agents are just can be completely, well, can be virtual,
Mhm.
that don't travel to specific locations. So explain that a little bit about what you actually do when you go to these locations and visit people and go in destination.
So I mean, I've done many different types of trips. In the travel world, they're called FAMs, they're familiarization trips. So that's where an end destination partner typically invites you out and you go around with them. They take you
Interesting.
to you move hotels every day, but you go get to try their favorite restaurants and meet the restaurant owners and the chefs. You get to go and you'll tour other hotels, you'll obviously stay in hotels, and you'll do experiences. Now, you don't really get the same city tour that a guest would, but you sort of get like a fast version where it's like, that's that museum and that's for these types of people. That's that
Hmm.
museum. So it's sort of a fast forwarded version and it's crammed into a week. So those are very fun. I've also sort of done it myself with other travel agents where we go over and we tour hotels, we do some of these experiences, we do day trips, because there's nothing like being in a destination to learn it and
Hmm.
understand how it feels to be there. Like it's just different. And then doing conferences. So there are conferences where a bunch of suppliers will come in and talk to you, but then there's some unique ones like a river cruise conference. So I was just at that a few weeks ago and it was
Hmm.
in Austria. So I fly out there, all the river cruise boats come together. I get to eat on them, tour them, meet their sales
Wow.
managers, learn all about what makes each of them different, because up until then I only knew of, two or three river cruise lines, and now I know the difference between 10 of them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then you tell me what you like and I'm like, okay, this might be a good fit for you, because all you've ever done is Google Viking, and it's like, well, there's some other ones. You just
Right.
they don't they don't have the maybe the paid advertising in Google or the mailers that come to your parents' house.
For sure. That's so interesting to hear because that I think is so valuable for somebody, especially in your position with your business, being able to go to those places and see what your customers will see and what they will experience. So I got to ask, what has been your favorite destination, one, that you've ever visited? And two, what has been the destination where you were going into like, you know what? I don't know if I'm going to like this, but actually it will completely just blew your expectations out of the water.
So, my favorite city in the world is Rome, Italy, which is super cliche, but um, our first like big family trip to Europe, I was 16 and I can remember getting to Rome because we had been living in Switzerland. And so when we get to Rome,
Mm.
like I can read the menus for the most part
Mhm.
because like
Mhm.
Italian
Mhm.
food translates and the food obviously was so great. So that like just was very comforting. I love Rome. I studied abroad there as well. I've been to Rome probably a dozen times. Uh,
Wow.
you could drop me in Rome right now and I like know where I would eat. Well, maybe not today because I'm it's very busy this right now with everything going on.
Yeah.
But like I know where I would eat my meal and get gelato from. Like I don't need a map. I love Rome. And then for places that surprised me, I have two. So one is Split, Croatia.
Mm.
So Croatia's Adriatic coast, so it's like opposite Italy, and it's you go off and it's an emperor's palace. Diocletian, he retired there and he built a palace, his retirement home, and it went into disarray, but that whole town is now built into that palace, and
Mm.
it just is
Interesting.
so cool because I always thought of Croatia, I don't know, I thought it would have been rough. It's not rough at all. It's beautiful, and I didn't realize they had such ancient history, and they have super good seafood, and if you like, grilled octopus and all of that. So that
Interesting.
surprised me. And then my trip to Montenegro. So I get invited to go to Montenegro, and I literally have to like Google where is Montenegro. So no judgment for people that don't know. It's right next to Croatia, so that's a good thing. I knew where Croatia was. I've been there a few times, but that country in general surprised me so much. They have sandy beaches, which are tough to find in Europe.
Hmm.
They have mountains that you can go horseback riding, zip lining, like all these adventurous things. And it's only like 2, 3 hours to get from one to the other. Like,
Wow.
yeah, so you
Yeah.
can have this huge variety that has since it's a little bit newer to the travel scene, your budget can maybe go a little bit further there than it could in, Portugal or Italy or Spain
Hmm.
or Austria. But I love that variety. And I actually told my husband, like, hey, this is probably going higher on the list. And we'd probably pair it with Dubrovnik, which is in Croatia. That's
Okay.
King's Landing in Game of Thrones. So if you ever
Got it.
saw Game of Thrones, that's where King's Landing is filmed.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, my wife is in love with Italy and she studied abroad in Florence and went to Croatia and she said it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a place that I want to go to as well. So interesting. That's so interesting because they're so close together.
Hmm.
Just across the sea,
Yep.
basically. But switching topics completely, looking at you personally, what was something that finally clicked for you and changed everything from your business? It could be a situation, it could be a process, it could be a tool you used, it could be anything. What was something that finally clicked, even a mindset for you that was like, okay, this changed how my business is?
Sure. I invested in a CRM.
Mm,
So when I meet people with businesses and they don't have a CRM, I'm like, you're missing out. Like the efficiencies that you can have, the tasks list, the tracking, the management, the automations you can set up, that really changed my business. So within the travel world, we have a lot of like, people that sell templates and master classes and all of that stuff, like
right.
in our industry. And I went and talked to multiples. I purchased multiple sets so that I could take my favorite things from multiple people and make my
Mm-hmm.
own, basically. But that changed my life because it's basically a project management tool, right? So, like, people are in buckets, and then when they once they get through the discovery call and move to the planning phase, they're in the new bucket and they get a new task list. So,
Absolutely.
so that everybody sort of has that same process, whether you're doing an Alaskan cruise or some big multi-gen Italy trip, right? So it doesn't matter how many people, how big, how what seems small compared to the big trip you have, you still get that same level of attention and detail, and nothing's getting missed because it's literally in there in a time date. So having that CRM, I mean, changed my business. Without that, I wouldn't be able to do, I wouldn't have been able to have two jobs as long as I did. That's for
Mm,
sure.
right. Yeah, it's the project management experience coming out. You saw it, it was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
this is perfect.
that was it. That was
Yeah, that
it.
was it. And so about the industry and about you mentioned other people that are, selling templates or master classes or whatever it might be. If someone wanted to do what you're doing and become a travel agent and have their own business, what advice would you give them outside of the typical, any typical advice that you may hear or may search on Google, even look up on Chat GPT? What's something that is um, maybe not spoken about when it comes to the industry if they wanted to get into it?
So I have a lot of people reach out to me on socials or in person to be like, I want to do what you do. And I literally have like an email that I send them because people ask me this all the time. And I
Hmm.
tell them like the three different basically paths they can take to becoming a travel agent. And I think if I started all over again, or if I had gone about things differently, there are like sub teams of travel agents. Like I'm solo, started my own brand, everything, which is
Hmm.
great. But there's a lot of people that are smaller teams that specialize in things. So whether you want to go into a group that is specialized and you love Disney or love cruising, and this group, that's what they do because they build those relationships with the cruise lines and that's what they focus on. Some people specialize in Disney. That's a great example, right? And they
Hmm.
all just love, live, and breathe Disney. They go to Disney together, and I think that those opportunities are great. That's probably the route that I would have thought to do differently is find one of those small units that might have some of these systems already set up, because if you don't have the project manager side or the desire to go listen to hundreds of podcasts to find what suits you, it's tough to build up, right? It takes a lot of time and a lot of thought. My travel experience is so deep that I don't really need the guiding on that. What I needed
Hmm.
was the tools. So if you're newer to the industry, if you don't have a crazy travel resume or an intense amount of like corporate background, going into one of these smaller teams is the way to go. And we have them here in Nashville. They're all over, they're all over.
Right. Do you think people who want to become travel agents need to have an extensive experience in traveling across the world, or can people just kind of learn as they go and not really need that experience? Do you think travel agents can become an agent even if they haven't traveled across the world?
No, like, right, like I I mean no, not really. But everybody has traveled something, right? You've done, your parents took you to the beach growing up, so you love the beach. That's the thing.
Hmm.
You need to find your niche because while you might not have had the opportunity to travel Europe, like that's fine. But if you grew up going to the same beach every year, then maybe your thing are these beaches. And
Hmm.
you find a team and you're able to go and explore more of these beaches. Or maybe you have gone on a few cruises. Like, I'm not saying you need to have traveled super extensively, but you definitely need to be familiar. Like, if you've never gotten on an airplane, it's tough to guide somebody on what you need to pack or not pack,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
like I do I book places that I haven't been to? Yeah, but I do a lot of research and I have like I've been to Paris, I haven't been to Normandy. Like I have a decent idea of how the train system works though in the country.
Right. For sure. Yeah. It's funny you said the packing because I remember the first time I went to Italy and let's just say I overpacked very
Yeah.
badly,
Yeah.
um, to the point where I had to pay for the overweight luggage
Yeah.
multiple times. Not a fun experience, but let me tell you, the second time I did that,
You know,
carried everything on, and you know exactly what you need, and if you need to get something else, you just check it and make
you
sure
can
it's under
and
the
you
rig.
can buy it. You can buy
They
things. They live there.
yeah, they do have stores and
Yeah.
things. Yeah, that was one of the biggest things. Like, oh my gosh, I gotta pack my
Yeah.
entire world up because I was gone for a month. Hello, friend. We have
Yeah,
a
that's my
dog
my
entered.
dog.
Awesome. What's his or her name?
Obi, like Obi-Wan from Star Wars.
Is that where the name came from? I
Yeah.
love it. I
Yeah.
love it. That's awesome. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's so important, having that passion mixed with your experience and your knowledge. I mean, it ties everything back to what you said before. I think it's so true. Um, and thinking about, where when you started and where you are now, how do you measure success differently versus where you started and where you are now?
Well, I've never been good at looking at numbers, so we can just, if anything, I would say maybe my success now is actually looking at numbers,
Mm,
right? Because in the beginning, you're just so excited that you have somebody that wants to talk to you or somebody that books a trip with you and you're like, I want to give them everything. I'm going to mail them their documents. I'm going to leave a gift in their room. I'm going to, follow up with a
hmm
welcome home gift. And it's like, well, you've just decreased. Now in hindsight, it's like you just went like that on how much money you made.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest shift is instead of finding success in how many people that are working with me, it's seeing the success that's able to support my life.
Mm, mm.
So once the math started mathing, right? But until you until you start to need to rely on it, it's like a side hustle and fun. It's like, no, this is a business as well.
Yeah, it's a different level of commitment for sure, and a level of I wouldn't say seriousness. I mean, seriousness is the right word, but importance for
Hmm.
sure. Knowing that it's, something for fun. I'll book a couple trips here and there versus, okay, my family is relying on this
Yeah,
to XYZ,
to go on vacation.
education, doctor's appointments,
Hmm.
whatever it might be, babysitting, school, all that stuff. Absolutely. I mean, that's very interesting. It's the numbers now that makes total sense.
I know
Looking
it's
at the industry,
backwards though, right? It should be
right,
like your success is emotional. Like, no, I had the emotional success. I
right.
needed the math to math.
Exactly. Yeah. When the math it makes everybody happy. That's my
Yes.
experience, at least.
Hmm.
So, thinking about the travel industry as a whole, what has been, um, and from your experience, what's the biggest myth about the travel industry and the just travel agents as a whole, would you say?
That we're going away or that you don't need us. Can you book a trip all on your own? Yes, of course you can. Like people do it all the time. But the value add that you get by having boots on the ground in destination is insane because the things that are the worst is you are going to Rome for potentially the only time you might ever go to Rome. And
Mm,
you're like, I went on Viator and I booked my small group Vatican Museum. Perfect. But you get there and the guide shows up late, okay, and you can't understand them. Like that to me is like the word. Like now I may like in that moment you're like I would pay any amount of money to be able to understand this guide and actually enjoy this experience
mm,
because
mm,
it feels like a waste. Another example, when we were in Montenegro, we had like on our schedule was to leave this lake and go into this town and have this lunch. And while we're at the lake, our the CEO of the company said, "Hey guys, we're actually not going to do that." He said there was a landslide here and there's protests here, so we're not going to be able to take that route. So instead, we're going to eat lunch here and then we're going to go zip lining over this valley and then we'll go down a different way.
mm.
And if you were on your own, first of all, you wouldn't know about either of those things. And second of all,
Right.
you'd be sitting in traffic just so angry and hungry. So you can do these things on your own, but the value add that you'll be those drivers are showing up, you're going to be able to understand your tour guides, you have somebody to call if you're uncertain about something. I've had clients leave their phones in transfers and then
Oh,
they call the point of contact, the transfer comes back and gets them their phone. If you were in
mm,
taxis on your own, you're not getting that phone back and you're like,
no.
well, that would never happen to me. Like that happened to like a 50-year-old woman. It's not you know, great great grandma leaving her phone. Like these are normal
Hmm.
people that don't mean to leave things. So it helps a lot logistically. It also helps because I do these like custom food maps. In the app that I
Ooh.
give you, I literally have a Google map for like every city. I have one for I don't know, Rome and Florence and Amsterdam and Nashville and New York. So
Hmm.
New Orleans. So when you go and you walk out of a museum and you're hungry, you don't walk across the street and have terrible food, which you might, because that to me is the worst. Instead,
Hmm.
you open that map and zoom in and you can see all the little dots for all the restaurants nearby that either I've eaten at, my clients have liked, or my partner in destination.
Hmm.
Because having a bad meal in Italy is the worst, and it does it's happened to me. It does happen.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
But we're not
Yeah,
wasting our time or our energy or our money. Like we're going to spend it where it makes sense and where we will value it the most.
for sure.
So
Yeah, yeah.
you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't do these trips multiple times a year, like you don't understand the intricacies of it. And I do, or my in destination partners do,
Hmm.
to make
Yeah,
calls on the fly and move things around to make it so that you still enjoy that trip. Because when you do a trip once a year or every other year, especially a bigger anniversary trip, like it's not worth the risk.
right.
Like, how many times are you going to go to Santorini? You don't want to stay
Right.
in a hotel that smells like cigarettes and you can't sleep on an uncomfortable bed and there's no air conditioning,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
which I did. So I know.
Yeah, that those experiences, I think, in a way, trying to see the silver lining in it, you have to experience it to know the other side.
Correct. And
And
appreciate it.
exactly, because my wife and I, we've been to places before where we're like, probably not gonna come back here. But
Yeah.
there's some that were like, we'd stay here forever.
Hmm.
And you mentioned two great things about why I think travel agents are so important. One, we got into, I believe it was Florence. I think it was the train station in Florence, and we got into a taxi, and we get in, sit down, and look next to us, and we see somebody left their phone, and we we're like, hey, taxi driver, somebody left their phone. They gonna say spoke English. And he was like, oh my gosh, but who knows where that person is now? Who knows what could
Yeah.
have happened? And the second thing was, oh my gosh, it was about oh, what was it? It was we were in Italy in September for our honeymoon, and there were transit protests going
Mm,
on, and we luckily were able to navigate pretty well because she's been to Italy multiple times. It was my second time. And so we were able to figure things out. But let me tell you, the stress behind that
yeah.
was immense. Getting on a train and then it not going and then having to find transit
Hmm.
for a location that was an hour plus away.
Yeah.
Um, and the train just stop at a station and then the conductor just leaves.
Yeah.
Those are the things that people may not even know about. I mean, there were people on the train that were like, "What's going on?" And we're like, "You haven't heard of these protests?" And they were like, "No." And I was just like, "Exactly." So that's where somebody like you would come into play. Where if you these whatever it might be, whether
Hmm.
it's environmental, we were going to go to Sicily when
It was hot.
yes, and oh my gosh, Mount Etna, correct?
Yeah.
And yeah, we were going to go to Italy when Mount Etna started um, to erupt or start to erupt, and we were like, well, we can't do that now
No.
because now we have to fly
And
somewhere
for
else. We have
you
to
guys to call audibles while you're in destination is a lot. It's stressful on both of you. On the like,
exactly,
eh, it's nice to be able to call somebody else and be like, "Hey, you're not in my emotional situation. You deal with this."
exactly. You can think because for you it's logical. For us, it's like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get to our next
Hmm.
place? Is our entire trip ruined? Are we going to be
Yeah.
stuck here? Like you just go on this rabbit hole, and I think that
Correct.
happens to a lot of people. And I compare this to real estate agents because there's a lot of people who think they can just buy a house or sell a house on their own,
Hmm.
and they can't. It's
No.
you can, but there's so many different things that you don't even know about or stressful aspects of the whole process that if you give that to somebody and pay somebody else to do it,
That does
you're
it all the time. Like
exactly.
they're up to date on all the things.
Exactly, exactly. That's why I advocate for like property managers. If you have a rental property, having a management company manage that so you don't have to worry about
Hmm.
the mailbox that gets hit by a car or the water heater that has to go out or anything that the tenant needs. There's you're paying somebody to do it, but it's well worth it. I think it's the same thing with travel agents because I've heard nightmare travel stories. Oh my goodness, there, and I know you've probably heard tons of them through your time. I mean, I
I've
can't
had
imagine.
them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. It's so interesting. I think travel agents for sure are valuable. So thinking about just your journey as a whole, what is one thing you wish people that actually knew about the journey of entrepreneurship?
It is so hard. It is so hard. I think the thing that people don't put enough energy into is getting out in their community. So
Mm,
if you're not handed a network of people that directly want to purchase from you from the get-go, which, like, I don't know, I'm in my mid 30s, so that's not my world quite yet. Like, get out, go meet other people, and when you meet them, don't sell to them. Like,
right.
don't be selling to them. Get to know them, get to know about their business because yeah, I mean, that needs to be your focus. I really enjoy the networking world in my community. I do a lot of it, and I like going out to help other people in my area to say, how can I help you succeed? Like, it doesn't have
Hmm.
to do anything with travel. You're a
Right.
photographer. Like, tell me more about you. Tell me about what you do. And if you want to be that, like, you need to be that person in your community if you want people to start to listen to you as well.
Yeah, it's a long-term play versus a short-term play. It happens all the time. I meet people all the time that tried to sell me off the bat with a,
Yeah.
whatever it
No,
might
thanks.
be. And it's really interesting once you dive into and start thinking about um as from just in marketing as a in a marketing background, the psychology behind people and what they do and why they want to do things. And when you go to a networking group or you go to somewhere and somebody has an elevator pitch and asks you, "Hey, do you need this?" right away versus, "Hey, how's your day? Where are you from?" Gets to know you. The psychology behind it is so interesting. But I agree though, getting out in the community is so important for even it doesn't even matter your industry. I think.
Hmm.
Would you agree? It can be any
Yeah.
industry. Just getting out wherever you are and just getting to know the people in in your community.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And also like I enjoy the networking thing. Like I nobody ever taught me really about networking, like even going to like college and business school. Like nobody really explained what networking was. Like I always just
Hmm.
thought it was like more like job fairs to me is like networking, not
Mm-hmm.
what it actually is. And so if you're looking at starting your own business or you have recently, like look at your local chamber of commerce. If you want to invest in a BNI and that's your thing, that's cool. But I've enjoyed the smaller networking groups in my community. Those mean the most to me and just be genuine and stop selling to everybody. Get to know the people and give things a year. Like it's okay to quit, but give things a year because after a
Hmm.
year you'll have a better idea.
For sure. And so what would you recommend if somebody's starting a business in Nashville? What would you recommend from a networking group side that you've liked a lot if they're starting new or even if they're a seasoned entrepreneur? What groups would you recommend to
Your
join?
local chamber of commerce. So there's chambers of commerce, chamber, I don't know how to make that plural, but they're in all the different areas around Nashville. So whichever one is local to you, that's where I would start. I like to look at their event calendars so you can see
Mm-hmm.
what events they have because some of them are more active than others. So if you have two or three nearby you, look at those calendars and see which one has consistent networking events, or there's a lot that have either young professionals or women in business or specific professions. So I've enjoyed that group. That group has sort of branched me into other groups pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes longer to get sort of in the know of some of the smaller groups, but the chamber is probably the best in their regional. Also, Connect Nashville has a like free meetings all around Nashville every day of the
Mm-hmm.
week.
Hmm.
So if you just look at their calendar, like they have two on Monday, two on Tuesday, and they're like, in Spring Hill, Mount Juliet, like they're opening a West Nashville one. They have a virtual one. So, and they're free. So
Hmm.
it's
Interesting.
not even like a buy-in to it, but yeah, if you're like, I have a free day or I'm not sure, it's a good place to go and just test your elevator pitch But if you don't show up consistently, people are not going to remember you and you're not going to build those relationships.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's all about the relationships you build and how you build them, I think, the quality for
Hmm.
both sides. And so kind of finishing off with the list of questions and things that we wanted to discuss, what is one thing you hope people take away from your story of starting as a side hustle travel agent, now making it full time? What's one thing that you hope people take away from your story?
Oh, from my business story, um, I guess to do the research, right? To make sure the math is mathing every step of the way. It'll set you up for success long term. I know a lot of people don't always check their numbers, so
Mm,
I kind of wish I had thought about that sooner. But I think if people come away with anything, it would be to get out in their community, right? To get out of your house. Trust me, I like sitting in my little house and with my TV and my iced tea nearby as much as anybody. But get out into your community, put yourself out there, and listen to other people. Like you are not the expert, and you're better off lifting up the community, whether they're people in your industry and they're direct competitors or people just around and other small businesses. We are all better if we lift each other up. I'm
mm.
sure you've heard of many other travel agents. Like, I believe that we should all support each other in a way,
Yeah,
right? Like,
absolutely.
there's enough for everybody, right? It's sort of like hairdressers. There's enough hairdressers that the one that's right for you might not be right for me. So in any industry, just know that you are the right fit for somebody, hopefully, and to focus on that, right? There's enough, to go around.
Exactly. That's so important. I've heard a few other people say that, and it's really true. Regardless of your industry, there's more than enough to go around. There really is, unless you're in a very, very, very niche area. Either way, I totally agree. Totally agree. So
It can be
I
harder too for us ladies, right? Because we're a lot of times pit against each other, like in
mm,
the professional world, because you might have an industry that's mostly male and then a few females, and it doesn't mesh well. So I've sort of made it to focus on other women, lifting up women in industry. I know whoever's listening might be a woman, like is key. So lift up the other females around you that are lifting you up.
absolutely, absolutely, for sure. And so at the end of all of my podcasts, and I always ask my guests, if you could leave one piece of advice for the next entrepreneur that I interview, what would it be? And so Emily Brown, my previous guest, owner of E. Brown Leatherwork, she left you with this: don't stop trying and break the norm. Don't follow others in your industry, because paving your own path has its own payoffs. Love that advice. And so you said specifically, you're going to lead this for the next guest, is surround yourself with people who lift you up. Kind of ties everything into what you've said before. So why do you think surrounding yourself with people who lift you up is so important, specifically for entrepreneurs?
Because you are who you surround yourself with, right? Isn't there some statistic that like you are a combination of the five people you spend the most time with?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, like if you surround yourself with positive people who are lifting you up and supporting you and there for you and your cheerleaders, then you'll get that energy and you will be that energy. If you surround yourself with people that aren't like that, then you'll get that energy.
Yeah.
You'll get that energy.
Yeah. It's so I think it's so true, especially like you said, for whether it's women, whether it's people in specific industries, whether it's people that are in your um, demographic, however you want to define that. Absolutely, finding those people and lifting them up, and finding people who lift you up as well. Yeah, for sure. I think it's so true. So Kat, thank you so much for joining. And if you're listening, thank you for listening. If you've learned something, let me know in the comments or on social. And if you're on YouTube, and if you think somebody would enjoy the show or gain something listening to this episode, whether they're in the travel industry, whether they're not, or wants to maybe become a travel agent, definitely share this episode with them. But that is going to wrap up today's episode of The Slice, and thank you for listening to Kat's episode and Kat's version of The Slice.
Thanks.